If a little green is good, more is even better. Now, back to Green is Good with John Shegerian and Mike Brady.
Welcome back to Green is Good, and we're so honored today to have a repeat guest, our friend, Dr. Bob Epstein, who's an entrepreneur, engineer, and he's the co-founder of 5 amazing companies: Sybase, New Resource Bank, GetActive Software, Colorado, Microdisplay, and Britton Lee. But most importantly, the co-founder of E2 Environmental Entrepreneurs. Welcome back to Green is Good, Dr. Bob Epstein.
Well, thanks, John, and thanks for having me back.
Oh, well, besides John and Patricia Adams, who, changed the world together, you are truly one of those inspirational figures in the whole green revolution that we couldn't have on this show enough, Bob.
Well, thanks.
Well, seriously, that's how we feel about you. And today, you came on today to talk specifically about California Proposition 23, which would have suspended AB 32, the Global Warming Act of 2006, which was on last year's ballot. This is a very important topic, near and dear to your heart and to many people's hearts, and very important. Why was this so important to you from where you sit at E2 and all the other great work you do, and why did it have national significance?
Well, obviously for California, our largest area of new job creation is clean technology, including clean energy, making water use more efficient. All of those things. That is fueling a lot of the new job opportunities in California. So this bill would have crippled that. And the other thing, if you look at it nationally, with everything that happened last year, the failed attempt to get climate legislation in Congress, a lot of other things that were going on, California is a bellwether. So if California voters said, no, we're not going to do this anymore, it would be pretty hard to imagine anything else happening in the United States.
Got it. So, can you share, for our listeners, what was the yes side of the message? What was the no side? Give both and walk us through, because you've written an amazing article on this, which you've kindly shared with Mike and I, and I've read it, and it was highly educational. But for our show purposes, we need to get that, condensed to our listeners. Can you explain the yes and no side and how the journey progressed?
Sure. Well, the yes side, they were both pretty straightforward. The yes side called this the jobs initiative.
Right.
Vote for this, and there'll be more jobs in California.
Right.
We all care about global warming, but we can't afford it. We can't afford to address it right now. Once we get our economy back rolling, then we'll be right back to it. So their message was, get more jobs and stop the energy tax.
Right. And and so who funded this campaign, which is very important to understand, and explain about why the no campaign, did not focus on the clean air and focused on clean air and not on climate. Explain that whole differential. It's a little bit confusing to even me.
Well, in doing our analysis, we're asking somebody to vote no on a proposition, so we need to give them something to say no to.
Right.
So you can't exactly say, if you believe that climate change is real and California is addressing it, just say no.
Right.
People can't remember which way to vote. So they need to say something no to. So
right.
The message was, say no to the dirty energy proposition, because it's absolutely true that if that passed, the air in California would get dirtier.
Gotcha.
So the first message was, say no to the dirty energy proposition.
Gotcha.
The second message is it's brought to you by 2 out-of-state oil interests. And the third message is, and if it passed, it would kill our clean technology industry.
Got it. Okay, so let's go back now. That's great points. And so talk about Valero and Tesoro and how much money they put into this campaign, and why were they behind the yes side of this?
Well, so Valero was approached early in the year last year, and they were shown the polling that said if this is positioned as the California Jobs Initiative, it's likely to pass. And so putting your money in here, is likely to provide you a return. And Valero's concern as an oil refiner, not an integrated oil company, is they were not in a good position to comply with California's requirements to make stuff cleaner. The majors had done a lot of work, but Valero was not doing very much, and so they and Tesoro looked at this and said it would be cheaper to spend our money trying to change the law than trying to comply with the law.
Okay, Bob, now what is, for our listeners and for me too, what's the difference between, I think I know, but would you explain it and flesh it out so we're sure, the difference between an integrated oil company and a refiner? I know the refining takes care of it. Is it, as suggests, that integrated is from exploration to drilling to everything, right?
Well, let me tell you, I had no idea either when we started, when I started on this campaign, but we were curious as to what would motivate them, and then we found out their only business is buying crude oil from somebody else, refining it, and then selling the finished products, primarily diesel and gasoline, and that's all they do for a living. Now, it turns out because of the success of fuel efficiency that's really starting to happen in the fleet, the United States now has more refineries than we need. So that puts tremendous pressure. If all you do is refine product, you're trying to find the cheapest way to do it, and they even had to shutter some refineries because we just have too many in the United States. The integrated oil companies, on the other hand, make their money in a lot of different ways. Refineries is just one of them. So they're in a better position if refineries are unprofitable at the moment. They make the profits in other places. So they have a better ability to manage it. And they tend to be international in their outlook, whereas the refiners tend to be domestic.
Okay.
And so because of those various reasons, we gradually learned that the major oil companies, we'll call them that, generally were either neutral or they were opposed to Prop 23. And it was really almost entirely a small number of independent refinery-only companies that were supporting Prop 23.
So, I pulled some, prior to this interview over the last couple of days, I pulled some public documents. Is it fair to say Valero put in over $4 million and Tesoro companies put in over $1.5 million?
Yeah, it's a little bit more than that.
Right.
Actually.
So they put in millions of dollars.
They put in the majority of the funding.
Wow. Unbelievable.
And they did it. They started early and did it often. So they were. It's kind of a weird thing, but people like. There's a lot on the voters' minds. There's a lot of different measures on the ballot, and they have a small amount of time to look at something. So when you see that this is being funded primarily by two out-of-state oil companies, you're suspicious. Well, why should they be in here trying to change California laws? Because all they care about is the best interest of California citizens or what's going on. Of course, it's completely their right. I mean, they're companies. They stay in business by being profitable. I mean, they're acting in a perfectly reasonable way. But the voters had every right to be suspicious.
Interesting. That is so interesting. Bob, it's no secret why you're so successful. I mean, to for any one person to have one of the companies that you created and the success that brings is truly a feat in this world. But to have your serial successes both in the private sector and in the public sector, to me, after having gotten to know you and follow you, is truly an accomplishment that most people never get to reach. What I love about you in your writing here and what I read, what you sent over and what we've read, your article, is lessons for the future. What did you learn about environmental campaigns by, this major victory, but also the campaign itself and the journey? What are the lessons learned here?
Well, there's a couple, and I'm glad you asked. The most important one is the difference between a policy and a campaign. That if you go to somebody and say, this is an important policy, let me explain to you how it works and why you should support it, they kind of gloss over it.
Right.
Now, it's way too much to ask. A campaign says, this is an objective we're trying to achieve and why it's worth pursuing.
Got it.
And so if you look at what we did, we didn't have time. There wasn't enough money or time to say, let's explain to you how all these policies work and how they help address climate change in a way that's going to make us economically better off.
Right.
They don't have time to learn all that, but they're motivated. So what's the motivation? Well, it turns out that in polling, in every state and every political persuasion, people care about clean air.
There you go.
And if somebody's going to dirty the air, they expect them to clean it up. So focusing first on clean air and then building it from there was the important policy frame. And I see the same thing happening now if you look at all of the attacks on the Environmental Protection Agency.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, everything from clean air to clean water, it's being positioned as, well, this is just government and bureaucracy run amok. We need to rein it back. Where the fact is that if these changes are here, your water will be dirtier and your air will be dirtier. Is that what you want? So they're trying to start it, if you will, the opposition is positioning the frame as bureaucracy run amok, big government. And the right frame is not to respond to that, but to say they're describing a scenario where let's have dirtier water and dirtier air. Who's in favor?
Right.
Who wants that?
Yeah. And so your message here on that lesson learned is just keeping it simple.
And having a frame that describes the aspirational goal as opposed to the details of the policy. I'll give you a great example. Last year, we didn't talk about sort of a clean energy economy. The short phrase was cap and trade.
Right.
Well, cap and trade is a policy detail. Who cares?
Right.
What are we really trying to achieve? And that's how you lose a lot of people. So the first thing is really having a campaign frame that's really motivational. But then the next thing I learned is that a really good campaign has three things. It has a victim, it has a villain, and it has an opportunity. So in the case of Prop 23, the victim is anybody who breathes air, right? Because dirty air hurts everybody. The villain in this case was clearly Valero and Tesoro.
Mm-hmm.
That was very generous of them
to
offer that. You don't always get that lucky. The opportunity is a clean energy future.
Wow.
And when you have those three elements together, people take to the streets. And if I look at like the fight going on in EPA now just by comparison, there's a victim clearly identified. There's an opportunity, but the villain is hidden.
Very interesting.
Who's the villain in this case? It's sort of, there's no one player going on. It makes it harder to do, but anytime you have a victim, a villain, opportunity, I think you can make it.
Recipe for success.
It's a recipe for success. The other thing we learned is that you want to be very broad-based and very bipartisan. And so we were very fortunate there to be able to work with, former Secretary George Shultz and other Republicans, including getting the Republican candidate for governor, Meg Whitman, to come out opposed to Prop 23. So it wasn't viewed as one party versus the other. It was broad-based and bipartisan. And then the other thing we learned is research. We all think, we know what message we'd like to hear for ourselves.
Right.
We're not always the ones we're trying to speak to. So doing independent research for somebody said, this is what people will respond to, what they won't. This is what they think, whether you like it or not. But doing that fact-based research made a big difference. So those are the four things that maybe I knew, but now I know them really well.
So really, to recap, what you really need to do is come up with a broad strokes message that is a concept that people can understand, first and foremost, then focus on the details, and then you need a victim, a villain, and an opportunity.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you can put it together like that, people can understand it quickly. And when we interviewed people after the election, we had incredible recall. People remembered the messages we delivered. And they remembered a lot of the initiatives. They couldn't remember which way they voted.
Mm-hmm.
On this one, they did.
So interesting.
So the say no to dirty energy
associated
with the numbers 2 and 3.
Bob. When you interview any successful person, there's always during the ebb and flow of a campaign, or for that matter, a business, from inception to a liquidation event. There's always a favorite moment. What was your favorite moment in this successful campaign?
My favorite moment was the video we put together.
Okay.
That a friend sent me these lyrics to the song, which the original song is the Yellow Rose of Texas.
Yes.
But this was the Valero oil of Texas is not the oil for me. And so the lyrics were incredibly clever. And so then we went out and we found a country western singer and a small band to record it for free. We found a recording studio to donate their time. And on a Friday afternoon, they sent me this tape of this going on, a 90-second tape, and I just loved it. So I spent all weekend pulling images together, various things, and put together a YouTube video that went viral on Tuesday, and quickly grew. And so it was a small point. It didn't swing things one way or the other, but I love it when you have a campaign song.
That is awesome. You got to have an anthem. How many people ended up watching it on YouTube? I love these kind of stats.
In the first couple of weeks, there were about 10,000 people.
Perfect.
That I remember seeing it, and then it got spread around on Facebook too.
Perfect.
And got a fairly large circulation there.
So social media played a role here too.
No, the biggest media play here was paid media. I mean, we spent over $20 million.
Wow.
Unfortunately, on television targeting very specific areas. My favorite part there is the opposition went live in the Sacramento area. They turned their ads on first.
Right.
And so we viewed it as a test case. So we redirected some of our efforts and didn't match them dollar for dollar, but increased our advertising in the same area. At the end of 1 week, the market position had moved in our favor by about 10 points.
Wow.
And so that said that their best ad running against our ad caused people to turn away from them. So, the more money they spent, it didn't help. And
Talk about a villain. That's great.
Yeah, at that point, I think they knew that this wasn't just about raising money, that our campaign frame was the one that people remembered. They remembered the dirty energy proposition. They didn't remember the California Jobs Initiative.
Wow. So
and that's why we won by 22 points.
Well, that's the next point here.
Yeah.
When you have the numbers here, when you look back on the numbers, and everybody's vision's always perfect in the rearview mirror. But failing by 22 points in both conservative and liberal counties, lesson learned. What do you think this means? Because you're involved with so many things, which we're going to talk about after this. But, lessons learned nationally. What does the visibility now on the future look like with regards to environmental issues, campaigns, and the fight that we've got to continue fighting across this great country? Well,
it says to me that the voters strongly care about clean air, clean energy, clean water, clean air. They have a few special places that mean a lot to them. And if you remind them of that being at stake, you can win most of these battles. But if you end up trying to fight about which regulations changes will create more jobs one way or the other, you can't win those. You can't win that argument. I mean, there is an answer, but you can't win it that way because that's not the only thing that matters. I mean, it's like Toyota, maybe it's unfair of me, saying, we could make the accelerator not stick, but it would cost jobs.
For our listeners out there,
clean air and clean water is kind of a right that everybody has.
And just for our listeners out there, Bob, I know Dr. Bob is not picking on Toyota. He drives a Prius himself. He's just giving that as an example.
I have two Toyota hybrids.
There you go. I just wanted to make that clear to all our great listeners.
I'm not.
No, but just that's a great example, though.
But it's just the example that there are certain things. It's not about jobs. It's about the public safety.
Right.
And you don't risk the public safety arbitrarily.
Right. And also, as you said earlier, which is such a brilliant point, don't muck it up with policy. Keep it to a campaign.
Right.
Got it.
That's right. I mean, you need the right policy behind the scenes.
Right.
But people need to have a belief.
Well, and too, Bobby, it's a very good point that you made. You countered very well. Because in today's economy, I know an awful lot of people that really went online and researched both the pros and the cons of AB 32, the dirty energy bill. And as a jobs initiative, when they came out and said, well, this is going to kill a lot of jobs, your brilliant masterstroke was to say, it will kill a lot of clean energy jobs in emerging technology, which are the future of California.
That's right. And, we had one debate I participated in where they said, if you take all of the clean energy jobs in California, it's 3% of the total. So what about the other 97%? And my answer there is the other 97% is dependent on affordable energy. And that's not going to happen if we just keep competing with China and India for the last drop of oil. Affordable energy which the other 3% is working on, will come from making it more domestic sources and more alternatives to fossil fuels that are not, that are not dependent on digging in the ground for a resource.
Amazing. Bob, we're down to the last 2 minutes, unfortunately, and your depiction of the journey of your victory of California Prop 23 has been so inspirational for us, and I know our listeners too. But you're a trustee of the NRDC, which is one of Mike's and my favorite organizations. We have the great thought leaders from the NRDC on the show all the time, and also the co-founder of E2. Tell us a little bit about 2011 and 2012. What's up to bat? What are the leaders like you thinking about and working on right now?
Well, you have to look at the national and the state level. At the national level, there's a re-examination of some of our foundational laws in the name of jobs and government bureaucracy, and that frame has to be turned around, where we talk about clean air and clean water like we've described. So
okay.
I feel at the national level, a lot of it is defensive, with the exception that, as President Obama outlined, the opportunity to go for a very high percentage of clean energy and a proposed increase in the Department of Energy's investment in research. There's some just great opportunities to move forward there. And I hope the nation will move forward as a nation, but I know that a lot of states are moving forward. And we see a lot of opportunities. Now, we have people, we're moving forward in California in terms of advancing the percentage of of renewable energy we have in the state. There's a bunch of new ideas about how to make that work. It is saving people money now. The cost curves have dropped amazingly. So I see states exploring a lot of different opportunities. There's enough investment now in the area that you're starting to see, the product prices become very competitive. So that's really poised well. The states will do well, I feel. I'm hoping that at the national level have that go well, because otherwise, China's happy to do this all. And that's not the place. I want to clean China, but I want them to buy U.S. products.
I'm with you.
In the next 2 years, that's the dynamic I want to fix.
And that's what we all want. And I think that's just a great way to end today. And of course, Dr. Bob Epstein, you are always welcome here. You continue to be an eco-visionary and ecopreneur, and you're truly living proof, Dr. Bob Epstein, that green is good.
This program will be available for downloading in a couple of days from our station's website, keyword podcast. Thanks for listening, and join us again next week at the same time for another edition of Green is Good.